Here we are, live on YouTube once again for the first time in forever. I'm so glad to be back with you guys. I thought everything was finally settled down a little bit, but it's actually heating up. It seems like this summer, so much going on with Mississippi State sports right now. It's crazy, but that's a good thing. A lot of good stuff happening for Mississippi State, especially on the football front. We saw some baseball news today. We saw some women's basketball news today. It was a crazy 24 hours. Paul Jones and myself were doing exit interviews with the guys that were on official visits this past weekend. 15 guys, I believe, were on campus for Mississippi State for official visits. We're now up to 8 commitments from that group. That's pretty strong. We're closing in on double-digit commitments from a weekend where 15 guys were on campus. That's outstanding work from Jeff Lebby. They're hitting at a very high percentage on their visitors, and that's a good thing. If they do that again this weekend, you have over half this class done if you do that this weekend, because another huge group coming in, and this actually has a little more star power in it this weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But like I said, Paul Jones and myself talked to a lot of the guys. I still have several other interviews to get out. Paul has already got a few out as well. I think we're up to 15 stories just by Paul and myself in the last 2 days when it comes to football. And then I did some baseball, some women's basketball. 15 stories on a mid-June day. That tells you something's going on with Mississippi State, and that's great. That's great for us. That's great for Mississippi State, for Jeff Lebby, and all these other sports too. So let's talk a little bit about what happened this weekend. We're going to start with football, and I'm going to get to your questions and comments too. I want to address a little bit of what happened this weekend, and then also on Monday, some of the news that came out. I would like to talk about that stuff, kind of give you guys, if you aren't caught up, I'm going to catch you up, give you guys a little bit of a background, and then if you got some questions or comments, we get them in. We'll talk a good bit tonight, maybe even up to an hour. We've had an hour plus Talkin Dawgs, so I'm not opposed to that, but we'll be in here as long as you guys are talking. So 15 guys came in this weekend, like we mentioned, for Mississippi State. Mostly out-of-state players. They did have Madison Central tight end Micah Jones, who's one of their bigger prospects. He was on campus, a guy they're battling it out with Florida, LSU, Arkansas, and Ole Miss for. He's already taken visits to most of those places. I think Florida and Ole Miss have the upper hand here, but I do think Mississippi State improved their chances with Micah over the weekend. He had his whole family with him on his visit, and I talked to him. He had a great time. He kind of knows the lay of the land here, so it wasn't like he was seeing a whole lot of things he hasn't already seen at this point, but was just good to kind of get him and his family around the staff and take your shot there. And then 2 other in-state guys coming from the JUCO ranks, and Xavier Hardy from East Mississippi, and LaKendrick James from Copiah Lincoln. And obviously, Zay Hardy left uncommitted. I expect that recruitment to play out the rest of the season. He's going to be a highly recruited defensive lineman. Mississippi State's in the game here, and being close to East Mississippi is going to help the Bulldogs, because they're going to be able to get him to campus a good bit. But I expect him, like I said, to be highly coveted by a lot of schools around the country. So I think that recruitment's going to go on through November and probably into December. But LaKendrick James was a long-time Mississippi State recruit. State was looking at him out of high school. He ends up coming to campus a good bit the last couple of years when he was at Co-Lin. Had a great season last year with the Wolfpack, and was a priority guy for Coleman Hutzler. And Hutzler was able to lock him up. Just a big, solid, physical kid at linebacker. I think is going to be able to get in the backfield and really help you in the run game and help you rush in the passer. I think he improves your defense immediately next season when he gets here. That was a big get. That was one he committed, I think, like around midnight or something on Saturday night. Just a bevy of commitments that came in on Saturday night. And I can't remember exactly which one it was that committed first. I want to say it was Darion Horsley, the Georgia defensive back. 2 defensive backs out of the state of Georgia committed on Saturday night. Darion Horsley committed, and then Stephen Miller, and both those guys committed around the same time. I think on Instagram they were doing a live video and they committed, and two really physical defensive backs. Stephen Miller, I think, probably plays safety. We'll see, but Darion Horsley seems to be a guy that's going to be a cornerback for Mississippi State. But when you see him up close and you kind of look at him um, on the hoof, he looks like a guy that in most situations would be a safety, but I think he's athletic enough to play cornerback. So I like both of these guys. I like Stephen Miller a whole lot. And I think these are good gets from Mississippi State to lock them up. Then you had a commitment out of a big offensive lineman, 6'7", well over 320 pounds, Josiah Clemens out of Clinton Christian Academy. Really raw prospect. He just got his rating from On3. I think he's at 86. So the rating doesn't look super impressive. The offer sheet isn't super impressive at this point. But this is one of those takes I'm not, too upset about if I'm a Mississippi State fan. I think you can afford to take some risk like this on the offensive and defensive line because you just sometimes never know. But you have a 6'7" kid at that size, and he's got some athleticism in him. There's a lot of things there that you can't teach. And if you can get it out of him, that's an NFL caliber body. So I don't really have a big issue taking players like this. You see a lot of NFL players and you go back to their recruiting profile and there might not be a lot of offers and the ranking might not be super impressive because I do think it's kind of tough sometimes to really evaluate that talent at that position. But I think that this is a guy that really plays on the next level. If you can get it out of him and he can develop as far as his technique, because no offense to the coaches at Clinton Christian, but just, small school, you just don't see a ton of development this early in the high school ranks in the state of Mississippi, unless you're at a really big school. And, in some of these other states, they have the luxury of that, but there's just not a ton of development in these offensive line prospects at this stage of the game. So there's a lot to work with there, and we'll see if they're able to get it out of them. I'm not super upset about, like I said, them taking this guy. And then defensive lineman Christopher Johnson out of Robert E. Lee in Alabama. Another raw prospect on the defensive line. We'll see how he plays. I know that David Turner likes him a lot. They're ready to take his commitment. So he committed on Sunday, shortly after he left his visit. And then there was, in my opinion, the biggest get of the class at this point, linebacker Cavante Henry out of California Junior College, Cerritos College in California. I think he ends up at defensive end for Mississippi State next year. This is a player that played at Oklahoma that I think had the trajectory was going up for him. He had to transfer. I think grades were an issue for him. That's why he's not able to be immediately eligible right now and go ahead and transfer, but had a really good season last year in junior college. I think by the end of the year, you're talking about this guy as top 2, top 3 defensive lineman, possibly even defensive player in the country out of junior college next year. I love this kid. The film plays. Seeing him in person, he is just an absolute unit. This guy is going to help Mississippi State next year, and I would be shocked if he's not starting on the defensive line next season. So I love this kid. Committed on Monday. He committed on his visit. Very low-key prospect. He told us on after the visit he committed. He might announce Monday. He didn't really care, and that shows you a guy that's, I think, locked in. I remember Montez Sweat was a lot like that. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Montez Sweat, but I do think this is an NFL guy if everything comes together for him. He's not a player that you really have to develop at this point. I think he's kind of there. Grades have been an issue for him. He gets those under control. This is a player that can really play ball in this league. So, sorry, I was looking at a message let me check this real quick. All right. So, yeah, that's to me a really good get for the Bulldogs. And then on Monday, What else did they have? I'm looking at this list of visitors. Siku Smith also committed over the weekend. I forgot about him from Miami Central as another safety. It's very apparent that this staff is targeting defensive backs to kind of build that room. I think they're going to go out next year and go get some guys that can play right away in the defensive backfield, safety and cornerback. But you've got to build that room. There's got to be guys coming up that can be ready when their number's called. That's a very thin room, especially from an experience standpoint. And it's obvious when you look at this list this weekend of the defensive backs they brought in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They had 9 defensive backs come in for the weekend, and 3 of them are already committed, and then they're working on several more. And 2 of the bigger ones were Jalen Morgan out of Tennessee and LaDarian Clardy out of Florida, battling some big-time names for both of those guys, 2 4-star defensive backs. But I think State's in the game. I think they are definitely in the game for LaDarian Clardy, who is, in my opinion, probably leaning towards Florida State. That appears to be where the tea leaves are going. But I think State made a major move for him this weekend. I think it's Florida State and Mississippi State there for him. Ole Miss is in the mix for him as well. And then Jalen Morgan has a Georgia visit coming up. You know, he's getting hit up by just about everybody in the country. Ole Miss, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi State seem to be the teams that are kind of the Final Four. Those are where he's taking his visits. So that's that. So, yeah. What else have we got? Just some other news, by the way. I mentioned it on the site. We had that news earlier. Victoria Vivians, everybody remembers Victoria. She's joining the women's basketball staff. So that's a huge get for Sam Purcell and company. She's going to be an assistant coach after she finishes the WNBA season this year. So I think that's a really good move for Mississippi State. Adds a 4th assistant coach, which is now by NCAA rules permitted. And she can also recruit. She's director of scouting, so she's going to help Mississippi State scout games. And she's also going to be able to recruit. So I love it. Been something that we've talked about for a while now. She has been in the mix for that job. That's something that they really wanted to do in the offseason. We saw it with Ryan Howard, who used to be at Kentucky. She's doing some big things in the WNBA, but she's at Florida now. So I think this is going to be something that's going to be pretty regular around the country. If teams have the means to do it, they're going to hire WNBA players because you have the WNBA season and then college basketball seasons after that, so it doesn't conflict. It's also a chance for them to make a little more money because the WNBA just does not make a lot of money, as a lot of you know. I think that's going to change a little bit with kind of the evolution of it and what's come with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and the popularity's rising, but it's still something that just doesn't make a lot of money because the ad revenue and the sponsorships just aren't as high as what they get in the NBA. So it's a good opportunity for her. This is good for Mississippi State and Sam Purcell as well. And then also on the baseball front, everybody's been clamoring for a baseball commitment out of the transfer portal. State finally gets another one. Noah Sullivan, a 2-way standout out of USC Upstate. He was getting recruited, I believe, by TCU, South Carolina. I think Duke was in there as well that was recruiting this guy. You know, I don't know if he's going to be a pitcher at Mississippi State. He might help Mississippi State out a little bit in the bullpen. But for the most part, I think this is a guy that helps you in the order and probably going to be your first baseman, it looks like. The numbers are really impressive last year, 324 batting average. He was first team all-conference in the Big South, 17 home runs, I think 56 RBI, had a slugging percentage over 600s. And another thing, the 3 guys that they've picked up so far out of the portal, all of them very difficult to strike out. They're tough outs. I think that the balls that they put in play, the average there is extremely high. So what you're seeing from Chris Amonis and his staff is they're trying to find offensive players that are going to be tougher to get out at the plate. I don't think you're going to see a ton of home runs from this team next year, but what you will see is more aggressive approaches at the plate in the sense that they're going to attack it when they can, but I don't think they're going to be overly aggressive to the point where their strikeouts are extremely high, which was a very big problem for this team this year. And that's been when you look at every guy that they're recruiting right now and the ones that they have on board, that's been the common denominator with all of them is they don't strike out very often. And I like that. I like that approach. I don't think home runs are the end all. I think it's important. You look at all the teams that are competing in Omaha, they're hitting a lot of home runs. So I do think that's an important part of your game. But I also think that having good, solid approaches at the plate, not striking out, working pitch counts, I think that's important too. So, all right. Now that we got all that out of the way, we're at about 15 minutes in. Let's talk about your guys' thoughts and what you guys have on your mind. So we're going to go through some questions again. Drop those questions in the chat box over there. I'll be happy to answer them, whatever you got to say within reason. We'll start with Nathan Pittman. Is Anthony Maddox's brother still coming this weekend after committing to Ole Miss? No, I never expected him to come anyway. I've never thought State was even in the game with him. When they signed Anthony Maddox, it was over for him. Those two were going to play together, and if Anthony ends up transferring, I imagine that his little brother is going to go with him as well. So it was always Ole Miss. When he signed with Ole Miss, his little brother was going to come with him, and I never expected him to visit, really. So that's that. Kobe Walker, how do you like the baseball commitment today? I like him a lot. I don't think that he's a guy that's going to be all SEC. It would surprise me if he was. But I do think that he can help you. I think that he's a player that could bat over 300. I think he's going to have minimal strikeouts. Like I said, 10 to 12 home runs maybe would be my expectations for him, maybe even more. One thing about him is I think he was hurt last year. And this year you saw those numbers really jump. The freshman year, they weren't super impressive. And the few at-bats he had last year, not hugely impressive. This year, the numbers really popped. So I'm wondering, a year older, this is going to be year 4 for him in college baseball, what that looks like. And I know people look at it and say, you got a guy from USC Upstate. A lot of teams around the country, a lot of big names, a lot of good coaches wanted this kid. And so I don't have a problem with it. I think he helps Mississippi State. I don't know how much he moves the needle, but I do think he makes you a better team this year. And he's a better all-around hitter than Hunter Hines, I think, in the approach that he takes. I just don't know if the power potential is quite there like Hunter Hines, but I do think he can hit, 10 to 15 home runs for you. All right. Michael Crocker, baseball-related question. I know you said that we were in pretty good standing with a couple of more high-profile recruits in the portal. Obviously, you can't release names, but are there any comps that you can use? I don't know about comps, but they're after a couple of outfielders that I think that could really help them next year. One in particular would be great, and potential, in my opinion, a potential All-SEC guy if you're able to get him on campus. And I like where State stands with him. I don't know where it is right now as far as when he wants to commit or if Mississippi State is the destination, but I do think they're in a good spot with him. So that's big. And then I really like a couple of pitchers that they're on. So we'll see where they land, but they need to make some inroads, I think, as far as a couple of starters, probably maybe another bullpen arm. I don't think they got to go extremely hard in the portal at a pitcher. I think they just need 3 or 4 that could really help them next year. I don't think they have to go crazy there because you do have guys that you're developing that are already here. You have guys that are going to come in that should help. And we saw this past year guys that you weren't really counting on, Tyler Davis, Tyson Harden, guys like that. There's going to be players that make jumps in that regard. I do think you need probably 3 or 4 arms. That would be my outlook on it. 3 or 4 arms, maybe 2 starters that you feel like could start on the weekend, and then a guy that could really help you out of the bullpen. That's really what you need there. And then as far as offensive and defensive I think they need a catcher. I think they need another outfielder, maybe two. And they look like they're pretty set the rest of the infield, I think. I think they should be good. You got your third baseman. It looks like you have your first baseman. Um, and they need more competition there. And if we'll see what happens with David Mershon, it would be huge, obviously, to get him back. If not, you really need another middle infielder that's a needle mover there. But we'll see how it transpires. It's too early to throw in the towel in this transfer portal class. I think they've got two or three solid additions, but they need some more impact guys. But I think it's a little too early for the people that are throwing in the towel so far. Corbin Dallas says, here I'm renting this room you're in. Well, all I have in here are a couple of recliners. So I don't know if you want to sleep in a recliner, but this is my office. This is where I play my PS5 and I do my podcast a lot in here. And, I might watch Game of Thrones and Sopranos up here to get away from my 5-year-old. But yeah, I love this room. I just don't know if you want to sleep in it, but I will rent out. I got a couple of rooms in the house. If anybody's interested in renting it out, I'm going to hike up the prices during football season. But if you want to rent it out, we can definitely negotiate. Nathan, I'm guessing this is the same guy you were talking about. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming the Maddox kid is the Oak Grove lineman you're talking about. I think I answered that question. If not, let me know. Golf official, what changes will we see at Davis Wade this fall? Will the press still be in the current press box? Yeah, I don't think there's any real changes from what I can tell. I mean, I think they've done something with the bleachers in the student section, maybe painted them or something, or painted the student section. Somebody was mentioning that on the board the other day. There's nothing major. It doesn't look like they're going to do anything with the speakers, maybe something temporary with the speakers this year. And the lights, not expecting anything. I'm expecting that both of those things to be done next year from what I've heard from the administration. The press box thing, I really don't know when that's going to happen. I was told that's going to be next year as well, so we'll see. Zach Selman kind of, I think, came in after he saw the plans. The press box, John Cohen wanted all the press to move to the M Club building, and Zach Selman did not like that idea, so he scratched that. I didn't like that idea either, so thank you, Zach. So he scratched that. I think the plan is eventually, at some point, I don't know when, but the press box area is going to be gutted out, and that's all going to be club level, just like it is across the way on the east side. So I don't know when that's happening. I don't know exactly what the plans are on that, so you can't quote me on that. But they are trying to move forward with some facility upgrades there at Davis Wade. I don't know what it's going to be. It's been with the changing in administration, that's changed a lot of things because state had a lot of plans to do some things like some chairback seating in some areas. They had talked about doing another thing similar to what they did with the lofts in the upper deck. They talked about doing some of that on the other side, I think, and maybe some in the lower level in some capacity. A lot of that's changed with John Cohen leaving and some of the staff that was with him. So I don't really know what the plans are in some of the parts in Davis Wade. We'll just have to wait and see. But I don't think there's going to be anything this year. Nathan Pittman odds on Kevin Otis committing this weekend. I don't know what I would set the odds, but I think they're fairly good. I think that State has a shot. That would be a really good pickup for them to get him on board, kind of get the defensive line group starting to roll a little bit, adding some talent there and some depth. I like Kevin Otis a lot. I think he is a really good defensive lineman, one of those guys in the state of Mississippi that I think David Turner could do a lot with. So I think they're decent odds to get him. That would be nice. Zachary Tucker, what are you most looking forward to from football season? I'm really looking forward to seeing Jeff Lebby's offense. It's exciting, high powering. I want to see what these pieces look like in it with the quarterback and Blake Shapen. I loved what I saw from him in the spring game. I like these running backs. I think adding Devon Booth into that group with guys that have already played for you the last couple of years was a really good add for Mississippi State, and you kept most of that group together too. So they should have some depth there. I think Devon Booth was kind of the missing piece. Getting a guy like that out of the portal was the missing piece because I think those are really solid pieces. Kevon Lee and Jeffrey Pittman and guys like that, really solid pieces for the Bulldogs. But Devon Booth is kind of the more electric running back that you're looking for, game breaking type of guy. Seth Davis could be that, but he's going to be out for the majority of the season, if not all of it. So getting a guy like that, I think, was huge for Mississippi State to do that. So I like the running backs, love the wide receivers, I love the portal guys, the freshmen that they brought in to go along with what they have. It's the offensive line looks really good. It's just a really solid offense. I know the defense is what it is. People aren't very happy about it right now, but I like it. I like the group on the offensive side of the ball. I'm just not overly concerned with the defense. They just got to go out there and score a ton of points. And that's what I'm looking for this year. I'm willing, and everybody else should be willing to give them a little bit of a reprieve this year with Jeff Lebby being in his first season and the defense needing to be upgraded. But I think that the offense can kind of keep the excitement level high for you. We keep talking about on our podcast, Thunder and Lightning, comparing it to Ole Miss. I know people get tired of that, but that truly is kind of the comparison here is Jeff Lebby's offense in year one. I know Lane Kiffin was involved, but Jeff Lebby was definitely a huge piece of that. You talk to players that were there at Ole Miss in 2020, they will tell you how important he was to that team. Matt Corral will tell you how important he was to his development. He was the guy calling the plays. He was the guy behind that offense in a lot of ways. So you look at what he did there. You look at what he did at Oklahoma. I compared Mississippi State to that situation at Ole Miss. They were depleted on defense. They kind of had to throw some things together on offense, and he was outstanding in year one at Ole Miss. They were putting up 35, 42 points against teams like Alabama. They were in the game with them. That's what Mississippi State fans want to see. And while they might win 6 games, 7 games this year at best, I don't know. If you're showing that progress, if you're doing what you did in 2009 when Dan Mullen had the exciting offense, they were in those ball games, they were competing, that's what people want to see. You take that year and you build on it in the offseason and you're cooking. So let's see some exciting offense. Let's see Mississippi State hanging in the ball game with Tennessee, hanging in the ball game with Ole Miss, hanging in the ball game, putting up 3 touchdowns or something against Georgia, and maybe even a couple of touchdowns, 17 points or whatever against Georgia. That will excite a lot of people. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most is what the offense looks like. Ted Huddleston, how will the Victoria Vivian's hire work? The ESPN article made it sound like she was only going to work for us during the offseason and continue to play in the WNBA. So the offseason for WNBA is Mississippi State's season. That's the plan is for her to continue playing the WNBA, but it ends in September. So she will be available in October to start working for the team. Her role outside of the season is going to be limited. That's kind of part of the deal. But that's why you have 3 other assistant coaches. This is just an extra assistant coach slot. It's all money for you. And so Mississippi State will be able to utilize her during the season for developing players. She'll be able to scout for the team. That's kind of her main thing is scouting the opposing team and scouting the current team, but also scouting and recruiting on campus and off campus. She'll help out this program a lot during the season. And then when the season is complete, she'll go to the WNBA. But her goal is ultimately to coach. And while she's here, I think she's going to spend a lot of time doing just that, preparing herself for whenever she gets ready. I don't know how much longer she's going to play in the WNBA. I think this is year 6 for her. She's already been let go by the Fever, and she's now with the Seattle Storm. So I don't know, how much longer she's going to be doing this, but she now has a backup plan of being an assistant coach. This might be something that becomes much more permanent for her and a full time. It's full time, but a full time gig, in that she's doing it all season long. This might happen pretty soon. I don't know, but that's basically the gist of it. Is she's going to be available from October until March or April, whenever the season concludes for Mississippi State. Zachary, will there be any uniforms change next year in the brand? Well, the brand's not going to change next year because the State's still under contract with Adidas. Depending on how long Zach Selman is here, we could see a brand change. I'm not ruling that out. I know he has a good relationship with Nike and Jordan brand, so that's an option down the road. It just, to me, it kind of depends on how much longer he's here. I personally don't think they're going to make a change anytime soon, but we'll see. As far as uniforms, I imagine they're probably going to have different uniforms this year. It seems to be that they're kind of moving away from the banner M. So, I don't know. I haven't heard any rumblings about that just yet, but that could be a possibility. Weston McAlexander, fancy name. Do you still feel good about our chances with Caleb Cunningham? Saw he went to Knoxville this weekend. Yeah, I still feel good. I mean, he's going to take all these visits. Very impressionable kid, but also very complimentary. And as you see after every visit, I mean, he's speaking very highly of the team he's visiting. I think after every visit, I think every team's been, the top team or definitely like one of the favorites or whatever. I think that's just what you're going to get from him. By the end of the recruiting process, I still believe that this is probably going to be a Mississippi State, Ole Miss, probably Auburn battle for him, maybe Florida. But I fully expect Mississippi State to be in the mix. What a lot of people keep forgetting is this guy's here during the week most weeks. I mean, his trips to Starkville have far exceeded anywhere else. So anybody out there nationally, regionally, whatever, that's discounting Mississippi State's chances here is foolish. They don't know Caleb. They don't know the recruiting process that he's had so far. They don't know how many times he's been here, and they're discounting Jeff Lebby and Chad Bumpus. If Mississippi State shows what they should show offensively, they're going to be very much in the game for Caleb Cunningham. We'll see how it plays out, but I still feel really good about State's chances. Jason East, do you see Kamario Taylor's star rating being elevated at some point? I do. I definitely do. I think he's about to go to the Elite 11 finals and just blowing up. Everybody that's seen him this summer has just raved about him. They're seeing what we've seen the last couple of years. The arm talent is through the roof. Just a massive kid with a cannon. There's a lot to like about what he brings to the table, and he's showing it now on the camp circuit at Elite 11 and a lot of these national camps. So yeah, I fully expect him to go up on just about every network at some point. Golf official, who do you see being our starting five for women's basketball? I got to remember who all they've got on the roster. I think that Denham DeShields is probably your point guard. She was point guard, I believe, at UAB. So I think that's probably going to be the one that's running point. Although, I know technically they don't really have a point guard. They don't like to call a specific point guard, but I think she's probably going to be the one handling the ball. Jacayla Jordan, probably your two, I would think. Anaya Russell, maybe your three. I think they'll probably move Debrisha Poe to the four, and they'll play a little smaller. And then Near Montague is probably going to be your center. That's what I think is going to happen for Mississippi State as far as the starters are concerned. But you got some other players in there. I think that Destiny McFall is going to factor in at some point for the Bulldogs. I've heard some really good things so far out of Taj Bloom, who tore her ACL last year, and a lot of people backed off of her. Mississippi State stayed with her. Sam Purcell's really excited about what she brings to the table. She's had some really good workouts so far. So she's one to watch too. As a freshman too, by the way. Cowbell Mania, do we think the state will continue to wear 1998 uniforms at least once per season? I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of rumblings, just like I didn't hear about the change in jerseys. I haven't heard a lot of rumblings about the team being, the program wearing those jerseys anymore. I wish they would. I wish they'd be the permanent uniforms, but it doesn't appear like that's going to be brought back anytime soon. I want the interlocking to be the permanent helmet, but we can't always get what we want. I've already pushed the state script enough. I can't continue to really hammer that stuff. I feel like I'm getting annoying at this point, but I would love to see it. Is Carl Jenkins a top priority for the 2025 class? That's probably a question for Paul Jones. I don't know. He's way more into it than I am. I help him out. I helped him out this past week a lot, but that's not an everyday thing for me. So you should ask Paul Jones that. Come join us on the On 3 message boards. Paul will be happy to answer your questions. How much of a boost in recruiting do you think women's basketball will get after the Victoria Vivian's hire? I think it'll definitely be a boost. She's a player that is still fresh on a lot of minds of people that have followed college basketball and women's. Went to 2 national championships, was 2-time All-American, 4-time All-SEC. If you followed women's college basketball in the last 5 years, you knew who Victoria Vivians was. If you followed WNBA, you have a pretty good idea who Victoria Vivians is. So I think it definitely help having somebody like that on your roster or on your coaching staff, I guess. And then, inside the building, having somebody that's in the WNBA that can kind of come back to these players and tell them what they can expect, played in this league at a high level, played against, Dawn Staley's teams and played against Vic Schaefer, played for Vic Schaefer, who's coming in. She's going to have a lot of ideas about what Vic Schaefer is going to do next year with Texas. She's going to be invaluable having a player like that in the room, even for the coaching staff and for the players too. So I like it a lot. I think it's a definite needle mover for you as a program. All right, got time for a few more questions if you want to drop them in. I was looking at my phone earlier. I think we're pretty close to another announced commitment for Mississippi State. I don't think it's going to be tonight, but that could be coming down the pipe this week. So stay tuned for that. You want to be locked in with us over at Maroon and White Daily and On 3. Great insight across the board, really. If you look across the network, a lot of great insiders, and I feel like we have one of the best in Paul Jones and what he does covering Mississippi State recruiting. So please come check us out. Cowbell Mania again. Do you think that Braden Booth and Dante Norrie will be instant impact guys for baseball? Yeah, totally. I think both of them could be. It's hard to project some of these guys. A lot of them you think are going to come in and play right away and excel right away. The game just gets them. It's tough. This is a very difficult game to adjust to on the SEC level. So it's hard to predict it, but they certainly have the potential of doing it. Both of them had great seasons. Braden Booth obviously was State of Alabama's Gatorade Player of the Year. Dante Norrie's a top 100 caliber outfielder. I think State could luck up. I say could because you just never know. They could luck up with him being an older player I think he's 19 right now. He's going to be 20 shortly after the MLB draft. Those are high school guys that a lot of teams don't really take a chance on. So that could hurt his stock and could be really good for Mississippi State. We'll see. But tremendous athlete, some speed that you just don't see at Mississippi State often. He probably answers some questions for you at outfield if he reaches his potential and is in the lineup next year. That would be huge. So we'll see what happens there. I don't, count the chickens just yet, but would definitely be a huge get for Mississippi State to get him to school. Zachary, who'll be Florida's head coach next year? Good question. I don't know, but I don't think it's going to be the one they got. Billy Napier's kind of struggling a little bit. I just don't see him making out of this. You look at their schedule; they're going to have to do some miracles to win, 8 games. It's a tough schedule. So yeah. Cowboy Mania, I feel like the Parker brothers out of Purvis, Joseph and Jake, will be good guys to try and hang on to and be instant impact guys. Maybe so. I like both of those guys. They've had really good careers so far. Been talking about them for a long time. Been committed for a while now. Hopefully some of these high school guys can come in and help you over the next couple of years. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to close it out. I appreciate y'all. It was great to get back on here with you. I just thought with all the stuff that we got happening with Mississippi State that it was a good time to go ahead and jump on here and let's talk about it. So might be on next week depending on what happens with Mississippi State's recruiting weekend. I think there could be some fireworks from it, so we'll see. But don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Make sure that you're subscribed to us at Maroon and White Daily. We've had some great numbers since we started. Paul started that thing up in October, I think, of last year. And I came on in January, and our numbers have been outstanding. So we'd love to have you come join us and be a part of our community. But I appreciate y'all for checking in. I'll try to get back on here maybe next week. We'll see what happens. But I hope you guys have a great week, whether it be at work, on vacation, or whatever. Enjoy it. I appreciate all you guys for checking in and watching this, for being involved on the chat. Really appreciate that, and all the support that you guys have for myself and for our website and for Mississippi State Athletics. So appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you down the road.